everywhere know what's happening. And I think this actually gives us a lot of hope that society is moving to the right direction and technology helping us. I mean, there are some bad things that happens, like in China with Uyghurs when they use technology for concentration camps. But I think the general direction is it's very good, and I think we will be seeing the better society in the future that will be open to humanity, open to unlocking the power of each individual man, be fair for people who is weak and cannot not capable, but at the same time stimulating people to achieve new horizons. So it's difficult to see when you just live the short life, maybe in the US, in 5-10 years, everything change up and down. But when you see this a greater perspective, and I basically saw two systems, the Soviet system, and I can see it's very different. So I think we're moving as humanity to the right direction, and we'll find a way to build the better society, the open society.
As you said, the technology has made people around the world know what's possible. The breakthroughs in the I went to the Soviet Union when I was 23 years old. I was invited, and it was still the Soviet Union. And I got to experience what it was like there. I traveled from Moscow to Siberia, to where you were, and back. Got to meet the people, got to experience it. But it turned me into a capitalist. I wasn't even interested. I didn't know what capitalist was. All I knew was everybody's supposed to be equal. It sounded so good to me. Everybody talks about socialism or communism, and there's the description of it, and then there's the reality of it, right? And so you start to see that, it wasn't equal, not even slightly. I watched people in Moscow standing around 3 blocks so they could get half a loaf of bread and a little bit of milk all day long. And we were on a train with all these other Soviets. They were having caviar and having this incredible quality of life. It just doesn't work that way. But the fact that people could see a better life is what brought down that wall. It's what created that drive and so forth. And obviously leaders like Mikhail Gorbachev who are willing to consider things in a new way. But you're right, the world is flattened. And now, a tribesman in Kenya can now, with that little cell phone, provide education from MIT, from Harvard. He can do business around the world. He can transfer finances. He can do anything he wants. I remember when I worked with President Clinton, and I remember there was a day when he and I were talking, and he said, we want to keep these conversations private. I said, I agree. I said, why don't we consider using email? And he goes, I've heard about that. I said, yeah, there's this thing called AOL. You should get an email account. In our first communications by email, I found out that the world knew I'd worked with him because showing my wife at the time, I said, yeah, you can search things on here. I typed my name in and boom, for that day, the Washington Post came up and talking about my working with the president. It's that's how much the world has changed. A person in Kenya with a little cell phone has more technology, more access to research, more economic, more everything than the President of the United States did a couple decades ago. Yep. Pretty wild. That certainly should give us hope because the process is accelerating. Now, of course, Bill and Mikhail, I think we'd all agree that technology isn't one-sided. And a lot of people, technology can destroy us. Well, electricity can light up a city or you can kill somebody. So it is still the way it's used. But good seems to have overcome evil for the most part throughout human history. And my optimism is that trend probably won't change. Jason, what gives you hope?
I tend to ask myself 2 questions. I ask myself, who's driving and where are we going? There's so much reason for fear, right? That was your kind of opening. And it's but is there?
Yeah.
I think about the future of energy, and I think who's driving, and Bill's driving, and where are we going? and then I think about myself as an entrepreneur. I think every entrepreneur has an element of, right? And where am I driving to? What's my destination? And I try to think about the things that are within my control. It's give me the strength to accept the things that cannot change. And right, where am I driving? What's within my power? And to get caught up on is climate change a real question? And is it a real threat to humanity? Absolutely. But just to focus on the question, we're not going anywhere, right? All we're doing is we're in bumper to bumper traffic, screaming about how terrible it is. But little do we know that we're headed to the promised land, right? That's sort of what I think about is where are we going and who's driving, and then I ask myself, am I driving and where am I going? And if I'm not driving, then I know that I'm looking at the question or I'm looking at the situation wrong. And I look at what can I do right now to get to the destination that I want to get to.
And you just hit on what I found the most successful people, regardless of entrepreneurs. And I always tell people there's 3 questions that we're always asking, 3 decisions. And one is, what are you going to focus on, right? Whatever you focus on is what you're going to feel, true or not. If you think of the worst possible scenario, you're experiencing it now. It's why that old phrase, coward dies 1,000 deaths, courageous person once, so it's a real problem, you handle it. Because what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. And so hearing you, the second question that people see is when they're asking what I'm going to focus on, do you focus on what you can control or what you can't control? And you already said what you focus on. I focus on what you can control. Focus on what you can't control. You keep focusing on what you don't have instead of what you do have. You keep focusing on the past. You get those 3 patterns, you're going to be pissed off, frustrated, depressed. But successful people focus on what they can control. They focus on what they do have and how to use it to add more value. And they tend to focus on the present and the future as opposed to the past you can't change. Beautiful, Jason. Taking round it off with you. What gives you hope? I know you have more than hope, optimism, excitement about the present and future. When things look poorly, what do you focus on? What gives you hope?
Well, first, I'll say I have absolute certainty that the future is going to be better than it is today. And we have tons of evidence of this. And what it comes down to for me is actually what Prime Movers Lab is about. It's about science and service. More abstractly, it's about matter and spirit. And if we look at both of these realms, we are having tremendous progress. Civilization from a material level is defined by an infrastructure of energy, transportation, and communications. If you look at any time there's been a step change in any of these things, the Industrial Revolution, the printing press, the average human being's life has gone upwards in life expectancy, but more importantly, in quality of life during that life expectancy. And it's just without a doubt, you ask anyone, all of the right technologies are being put in place right now to make it so that the average human being can live on more food, more energy, more joy, more whatever it is that they want than at any other point in human history without having to do much. And we're going to be in that place of radical abundance within the next 30 or 40 years, just from the resources that we're producing. But the second question is there the willingness to solve all of those problems? This is we were just seeing Sadhguru talk next to you, and he talked about how we have to have the willingness. And what that boils down to is the level of consciousness, the piece of spirit. And if we look at what is happening in the world, you held an event with hundreds of thousands of people, maybe even 1 million people earlier this year. The number of people that are interested in raising their consciousness, the number of people that are pursuing meditation, pursuing spirituality is unprecedented. And these things actually go hand in hand, right? In a world, at least in the West, where people are freed up of maybe some of the day-to-day drudgery of a particular job, there is more time to invest in themselves. There's more time to go after what is life really about for me in the big picture. And